My first baptism in the mission was awesome. I was with my trainer, who's absolutely amazing, super kind, super loving. I absolutely adore her. And we were preparing for the baptism. We had made the programs, and we had made just kind of planned it out. We had bought some flowers as well to just have as kind of a centerpiece and just up at front that we could give to her name's Elizabeth, my first convert, and so that we could give that to her. Anyway, so I think something that was really big is that we have to make sure that the water works before the baptism, because oftentimes they have to get the water from a certain spot, and you just have to make sure that there's a way to get water and that everything's working so that the water can just be, that the font can be filled before the baptism starts. There's been a few times where the water, we thought everything was good, we started filling up the water and it wouldn't work. And there was a time where we had to go and there's trucks that go around with water, and we had to get their giant hose and put it through the window and fill up the font through this water truck. It was crazy. So just make sure that there's a way to get water, because you've been preparing forever for this baptism. Make sure that it works, that it goes well. And in every single baptism that I've ever had, you always have to clean out the baptismal font first, just because it's so dry and there's a lot of wind and they leave the windows open and things like that. It becomes kind of dirty in the baptismal font, so make sure you plan time beforehand to have that clean. So my story is that we were trying to get ready to heat up the water and everything like that, and the person who usually does that, our mission leader, he wasn't able to, so he kind of just gave us the keys and said, you guys do it. And we're like, okay, we can do it. It can't be that hard. It was hard. There's actually this giant hole in the ground that's like, it's a kind of a well that they get, and they have to, we have to get like this key and like put our hands down in it and turn it, and you have to be super careful so that you don't fall in because it's a giant hole. And anyway, it was really funny because I'm trying to communicate with my companion. Still, I don't speak that much Spanish, and she doesn't speak that much English. We're just trying to communicate on what we need to do and everything, and you have to stay together, so you can't go from one room to another without the other person. Anyway, but it was crazy, but the first baptism that we had was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. Just to know that you help somebody else in their journey to become closer to the Heavenly Father and to be able to return to live with Him. The fact that you're part of that journey is amazing. So I say, don't get too stressed. Make sure to work hard, but don't get too stressed on how perfect everything needs to be, because it won't be perfect. But just remember how much you love the person, and if they can feel your love, then the baptism will be perfect. I think that's like the biggest thing. I want to share a story about one evening when I was in my second area. The area was called Salina Cruz, or it was actually called Oleoducto Salina Cruz. And at this point, I was actually training, and me and my companion, we were trying to figure things out. I wasn't the perfect trainer as far as teaching English to her goes or things like that. I was always worried about how good I was being as a trainer. But you just got to make sure, if you ever are in the position where you're training, make sure that you just love them and make sure that they know that you love them. Take care of them over taking care of yourself, and make sure that that they feel your love. And when I was, so there was one evening we were trying to figure out something new to do, because we had just been in a zone conference where he was telling us that we need to think outside of the box. Our mission president was telling us that there's not one way of doing missionary work, and you think that there's just contacting, and then there's just knocking on doors and just contacting in the streets or things like that, but there's so many other ways of doing missionary work, and so we're trying to think of new ways of doing missionary work. So we're praying that we would have new opportunities in a different way to kind of share the gospel, and we near our house, there was a bunch of just apartment complexes, super big. There's about 15 of them, and they're giant, which means there's a lot of kids that from all those houses that would all gather together, and they would play and things like that. We had an investigator there who we went to visit. He was 14 years old. And we went to go visit him and to teach his lesson, but he was outside playing with his friends. And his friends were in an age group of, 16 to, I think the youngest was like 4 years old, so he was playing with all of them. And so we went and saw him, and he's like, "I'm sorry, I forgot, and I'm here with all my friends." And we're like, "You know what, it's okay, no worries." And he's like, wait, how about you teach all my friends? And we're like, "All of your friends?" "Of course, let's do it. Where do you want to do it? Just out here?" And so we taught a lesson outside to him, and he loved singing, so we would always sing a hymn as we started a lesson with him. And we brought out our little tiny hymn book, because it's easier to carry if it's small. So we had 2 tiny hymn books, and we started to sing "I Am a Child of God" with him. And so he was there sitting down listening to us, a few of his friends there too. And within minutes after we started singing "I Am a Child of God," you think all of these 15 apartment complexes, there was a kid from at least one of them, one kid from at least 15 of these apartment complexes, and by the time we finished the song, they were all trying to sing with us. And this was like 30 kids, all gathered around 2 sister missionaries and one of our investigators. And they were all sitting there and all trying to sing along with us and trying to gather around our 2 tiny hymn books. And that was an incredible experience, something that touched me so much, because there's all those scriptures about being as a little child. And there were a few parents that were standing around too, because they were playing at the park with their kids in this little area where we were teaching. And they kind of gathered in and started to listen to us. Later, of course, we contacted the older people, and they didn't want to listen to us, but they loved that we were teaching their kids. And so we came back again, and we taught Seth and our investigator, and then also the kids again. And after that, after a few times of visiting them and singing with them, their favorite thing to do was sing. We would sing with them, and then we would share a short lesson, just because they're young and so they can't be distracted for that long, or they get distracted easy. So we taught them for a few times, and then we actually started to contact them, ask them where they lived or where we could go visit their parents to see if we could teach them in their homes, and their parents as well. And we actually got to start teaching a few of those kids and their parents. And it was just so awesome. I think a big thing that worked well for us is working with the kids, working with the children and with the youth. Start with them, start working with them and teaching them, and then they often give you the opportunity later to find their parents and teach them as well. And out of all those kids that we found, as of yet, I haven't heard that any of them have been baptized or that their parents have. But, if you're just starting the process and planting the seed, then pretty soon other missionaries will be able to find them and visit them, and who knows, pretty soon they could be baptized and could gain that testimony of the restored gospel.